Chief Gregory Mullen, who leads the Charleston Police Department, and Sheriff Al Cannon, who leads the Charleston County Sheriff's Department. I will do y'all the courtesy of flipping to see who goes first. But, okay, Chief is going first. And so I'm happy to present these gentlemen now. Everybody, y'all are law enforcement officers. Everybody up here had 3 minutes. They took 6, they broke the law. Yeah, y'all 5. However, I'm going to do what I like for police to do when I'm doing 38 instead of 35 and give me 2-3 minutes miles over. Give me 2-3 minutes over.
Clearly, this is a very important topic and one that I take very, very seriously and very important in terms of the overall operation of the police department. As a result of tonight and as a result of the report, that's exactly what we need to do. I certainly am not going to stand here and tell you that I agree with everything in the report, mostly because there's some variables that are at play, I believe, in terms of how you come to those statistics, in terms of no debate about disparity, some question about how you actually arrive at those, and are there some other areas that we can look at that would give us an opportunity to see why those numbers are higher in some areas. And I'm going to tell you from my perspective as a police chief here, what we're doing about it, and I'm going to tell you exactly why I believe that some of those numbers are higher in predominantly African American communities. And it's not because we're targeting those communities. I'll tell you that, and I am sincerely confident in that. What we do, obviously, is that we listen to our constituents. And we do have more police officers assigned to communities that are predominantly African American. And I'll tell you why we do that. Because the community members in those communities call us and ask us to have officers there, because in many cases they are frightened about what's going on in their communities. I get calls constantly about there's drug dealing going on in my community, I need more police patrols, I need more police enforcement, and we try to listen to those things. We listen to what our constituents ask for, and then we go out and we try to provide that service to them. Now, here are the themes that I want to leave you with tonight. I'm not going to try to debate this report. It's a very thorough report. It talks about a lot of things across the United States of America. It pinpoints some things in Charleston County. I provided the statistics to Doc that talk about what we're doing here. There are some differences, 60-40, 52-47, 49-51. There is no huge disparities between white and black arrested for marijuana possession in the city of Charleston. I provided her with the warning citations that we provide when we stop cars. There are no disparities there. There are more white individuals stopped in the city of Charleston than there are black individuals and given warning citations. There are more white individuals stopped in the city of Charleston and given traffic citations. Now, I say that not to say that there's not an issue here that we need to talk about, because there is. And I also say it in this way. For years, I've been a police officer over 28 years. And for most of those 28 years, what happens when we have a discussion like this, there's people stand up and they talk about that they're bad police officers, and lots of police officers are ill-willed and they're racist. And then the police department will get up and they'll say, no, we don't have any biases going on in our police department. And what does that do? It puts that right there, right from the beginning. There's conflict. So what I'm going to tell you tonight is this. You don't want me to stand up here and tell you that there's no bias going on in law enforcement across the country. And I'm not going to do that. And I don't want you to stand up and say that all the police officers across the country are ill-willed and racist, because they're not. And I was thankful that you said that when you got up, Vicki. I appreciate that. What we have to understand, and that for so many years, this discussion about racial profiling and racial bias has been a conflict that goes on between the community. And there's a new basis of research that has come out recently, and law enforcement across the country is starting to embrace it, and it's called fair and impartial policing. And it's based on a science of bias. And what that science says is that inherently, people all across the country, whether you're a police officer or you're a doctor or you're a pastor or you're a lawyer or whoever you happen to be, there's some inherent biases that we all have, and we have to recognize those, and we have to control for those. And this fair and impartial policing criteria is what we're using in our police department to create that culture. And what I'm here to tell you as the police chief is, you know, this is an opportunity for us to look at an issue that is important to this community. But I'm also here to tell you, and I just want to make sure that I get this out, is that we're not targeting any specific race for marijuana possession charges. We're not targeting any specific community for marijuana possession charges. And we certainly aren't trying to prevent people from being successful. Gino Jones is a part of the Stand Up Charleston initiative that we do. That's going around trying to get young people involved more in positive things so that they know that they can be positive contributors to this community. We want people to be positive contributors. We want them to be successful. Now, at the same time, my job is to enforce the law. What I would really like for this group as a whole to embrace not only is the issue of this disparity, but also what is it that is creating this desire for people to use marijuana and other drugs at the level that they are. What I'm more interested in is us taking an opportunity that I think has been presented to us, and this report has been a catalyst for that, and work together to find a solution and action steps moving forward that we can try to impact this situation as a whole. Thank you.
We've got some folks here from Walterboro and Colleton County. That community has suffered significant violence to the extent that SLED moved their low country headquarters from Charleston to Colleton County, Walterboro. Just recently went to a meeting up there. That's an example of how we respond to areas where there are problems. There are people, not out of fear of law enforcement, but fear of what's going on in their community, that when the sun goes down, they bolt the door and they pull the shades and they don't come back out until the morning. And we get complaints from those folks. And when we have meetings in the community, we have people that come up and complain about things that are going on in their community. Now, if you go, as I have said, to some of the barrier islands, when you talk to those police officers who are assigned there, and I have deputies that work at Kiowa, I have deputies that work at Seabrook, particularly in the spring and summer. You go over to the Isle Palms, Sullivan's Island, in the spring and summer, the nature of that area there dictates the kind of policing that they provide. And the biggest problems that they are confronted with is underage drinking. We're not going to the predominantly white communities as a result of complaints about drug dealing on the corner. If we did, you would see a difference in these percentages. Chief Drager said, to keep our envy for the level of support that Mayor Riley gives him. If you go to any other city in the United States of comparable size, this man has far in excess of the kinds of numbers of officers. And Chief Greenberg, his predecessor, used to take pride in saying his job was to run back up north to North Charleston. And I've got to tell you, to a certain extent, he's been successful in doing that. And so North Charleston is an area that has serious problems with a lot of people who are afraid. And y'all have seen some of the videos that were seized, and particularly troubling are the small children who are in the background enjoying that music and the guns and the drugs and the money that these young black males in particular were showing off. You remember those tapes that we saw. So there's a challenge there that we as a community need to face. We have a new chief in Mount Pleasant, and I believe in the four of us, you will find leadership in law enforcement that is sensitive to and who certainly will sit down and talk and work with anybody to address problems. Thank you.
As we have this meeting this evening, the trial for Trayvon Martin was going on. And I would like to take this time for us to at least remember him and what his family is going through now. And there was a reason we brought the picture, that we didn't just create the picture. This is what we had when we did the rally early on, when, you know, the need was all we want is justice. And while we're talking to this evening, and I've got to thank both of you for being here, and I always say we can agree to disagree. as, I find it difficult to dismiss what you know as facts. When we know that while it may not be intentional, we know that while it may not have been pre-planned, while we may even know that it would not be condoned, racial profiling happens. And it happens far too often enough. And if we don't think that there's an impact, and I thank Rick, you know, our Democrats here, for what he was saying about the economic part of it. And those people who don't walk in our community and live in our community telling us that people are calling up, yes, we've got trouble, we understand that. And as we move forward, if our law enforcement people are serious about it, don't ask me to figure out why they got involved in drugs. It's too late now, they're already there. What I'd like to know is what we're going to do with some of that money we take to do everything else other than find treatment in the jail. If you don't believe me, go down to the jailhouse, or if you know anybody whose family is in there for possession or use, and find out why they're on a waiting list and we don't have any money when we spend $430-some million for the correction center. We're building these, what I call courthouse of the jail, a house for people, but we have no money to prevent the continue. When you let them out, what else are they going to do? All I'm saying is, moving forward from this evening, if our law enforcement, for what I've heard the same glowing remarks about the new chief in North Charleston as well, from former Chief Sewell from Mount Pleasant. And hopefully, we'll have another meeting, and maybe not just a town hall meeting, but what are we going to do about it? Because we can talk about it, but until there are decisions being made at the level that determines where some of this money is spent and how we're going to fix a problem we already have, to pretend that it doesn't exist, because I'm just sick and tired of being sick and tired of people telling me it really ain't what you see. You know that, you know, don't believe your lying eyes. I'm telling you, because and living in the community and being exposed to some of the people and being in a position that we are as the NAACP, because we get the stories we hear, after a while you're trying to figure out, how does our law enforcement people don't understand that while we are not, absolutely not, branding every police officer as bad officers, or trying to imply that every police chief is condoning the behavior of these officers. What you've got to understand, that those children that we're talking about that are scared and in the background, and the rest of the parents are in the jail. And when you look at the numbers, you're trying to figure out, well, what can we do different so we can get different results? Because if we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to keep getting the same result. Thank you for your time.
We'll give you about 2 minutes. Folks up front understood that when I turn towards you, that means your time is up. I'll turn towards you at 2 minutes. At 3 minutes, if you're still rolling, I'll come and pat you on the back and thank you for your comment.
First of all, I want to say, as chief of police, the sheriff, as all of them sit there right now, their officers are out there in the street. They can't control what their officers doing while they're sitting here or doing their jobs. They would hope that all of their officers have their standards and live like that, but that ain't true. There's no way that you can say all of my officers doing this. When a parent sends his or her child to school, they don't send them to school to be bad, but they do. What I want to know is, after you done got complaints from citizens, and you got elected officials telling you these officers, first of all, citizens, you got to get a badge number and a name.
Yes, yes.
You got to create a paper trail. Because just calling them and telling them so-and-so did that, that's nothing. They're going to sweep that under the bridge just like it's nothing. Okay? So you got to cover yours. Get a name and a badge number. That way you can hold these people right here, all of them up here, accountable. While they sitting there, they ain't going to, they can't guarantee that all of their officers ain't racial profiling. They have no way of knowing that. They ain't going to sit up and say, oh, I got 1 or 2 that's bad. No, they ain't going to say that. If you got a police and he comes up to you just walking and you a citizen, you got to learn to ask them questions. Like, am I under arrest? Did you see me break the law? Why are you violating my 4th Amendment? You see an officer with gloves on and they got him. He looking for something.
All aboard! The stagecoach is about to